and welcome back to the American National Cattlewomen's Podcast, Calling All Cattle Women. I'm your host here today, Leanna and I'm also here with my co-host, Nicki Nimlos, and we are here to talk about the American National Cattlewomen's Summer Business meeting that took place in San Diego, California, earlier in July. Thank you for working with me on this, Nicki. I'm really excited to talk about this. We were both able to attend and we had a really good time.
Yeah, and I'm glad we're doing this right now because it's 5 days, 6 days post business meeting. So we have everything fresh on our minds and we're ready to talk about all the things. So those who weren't able to join in person or on Zoom, we hopefully will give you a good idea of what happened at the ANCW summer meeting.
Yeah, for sure. So to start us off, the big thing that happened was the NCBA update by Colin Woodall, who's the CEO of NCBA, and he had a lot to share. There's a lot going on right now. He primarily focused on politics, what's going on in the White House currently, and its effect on the beef industry, along with the screwworm situation happening at our southern border. I'll start with the screwworm. This is definitely something that we should all have our eyes on. It popped up last Thanksgiving in 2024, and the border was shut down while we were at summer business meeting. Once again, the biggest worry right now is the biosecurity aspect. So the screwworm is a fly who lays eggs in the soil. The eggs hatch, the larvae burrow into warm-blooded animals, and they're also able to get in through different wounds. So it doesn't matter if it's a deer, a cow, a person. This affects pretty much all mammals. And so the way that they're trying to combat this is through sterile males, because the females only mate once. When the female comes in contact with the sterile male, she believes that she is bred and dies without laying her eggs. This was a big problem back in the 1960s, and that's how they solved it back then. And they were able to push this down to Panama in that really narrow isthmus, I guess, in Panama, where it was very narrow, so it'd be easier to control. But since then, they have been moving further and further north, and they're right on our back door. The genetics of the sterile flies they're finding to be weaker than the wild flies. They don't have as good of a quote unquote libido. And so they're not hitting the females as good as we need them to. And we also don't have the correct amount of facilities. A fruit fly facility is being converted. They're working on building a facility in Mexico and Texas as well. That's something that's going to take time. So this is something that has been really affected by the illegal cattle trade and the Mexican cartels as well, and their input with the Mexican government. And it's becoming a really big problem down there. And so we're doing everything we can for it to not come across the border. But because it not only affects cattle, but also any warm-blooded creature, it could easily come in through deer or people or any other wildlife. So that's kind of our biggest concern. And the biggest reason they're shutting the border down is to get the Mexican government's attention, to kind of kickstart them into being more proactive about this issue, because right now they're kind of the front lines of the issue. Everyone in general is trying to work with drug companies to get labels to treat this, because we know a lot of our current drugs are effective and work, but we need the drugs to be labeled as treatment for the screwworm. And then the other problem is the larvae stay in the soil. So even if you treat an animal, if they go back to that soil, then they're going to have to be treated once again. So there's a lot of different things going on with it. Scientists have mapped the genome of this creature, so where there's other opportunities other than the sterile flies. But that's kind of the gist of the screwworm as far as I was able to take notes. There's a lot to go over.
Yeah, I mean, he spent probably a third of his time with ANCW giving an update on the screwworm because it is probably one of the most biggest challenges that ag livestock we're facing right now. I will note some of the other things he talked about, which will have big implications, especially for us in the West. I mean, we continue to talk about delisting wolves, grizzly bears, reforming the Endangered Species Act. So he kind of touched on that. Some of the other things he talked about was the implication of the one big beautiful bill, which we know passed recently. And some of the relevant things with that passing is death taxes and estate taxes. And so the tax exemption for individuals was raised to $15 million and $30 million for couples in estate value. And what's really great about this as well is it also is going to update with inflation and it was made permanent. And so, of course, we want the death tax to be eliminated, but this is probably as good as we're going to get. He talked a little bit about national farm security. And what I really loved that he said is that farm and food security is national security. And I think we really need to start telling people that more because that is absolutely totally true. He talked a little bit more about beef checkoff, and I think this is a good transition to talk about the person that came after Mr. Woodall, and that was Cheryl Duvoost, I think is how you say her last name. She's the vice chairman of the Cattlemen's Beef Board. And so one thing Colin brought up is the OFT Act, which is the Opportunity for Fairness in Farming Act. And I think it was brought forward by Senator Lee out of Utah and Senator Booker out of New Jersey. And it basically is an attack on the checkoff. And so Cheryl, she came up and she told us all about the beef checkoff. I have this little pamphlet she gave us. And I just want to highlight some of the things that she brought forward with how the checkoff is being used. And if people aren't familiar, the checkoff is a national marketing and research program designed to increase beef demand at home, internationally, everywhere. And so that's really its big goal. And so some of the things that they're doing is international and domestic marketing. And we saw growth in the beef market in places like Central America, it's up 24%. Africa, it's up 34%. The beef checkoff also supports new research. For example, why certain strains of salmonella cause outbreaks. They also do a ton of stakeholder engagement, especially on social media, and they saw a 210% engagement and growth. So she gave a really good update on the checkoff. She told us more about what is it? Where does the money go? It doesn't support policy and legislation. It is all about research and education. And so I really valued that talk and I thought it was really good for ANCW to hear.
And think that something that people forget about the beef checkoff, especially Senator Mike Lee forgets, is that it is completely voluntary. You are capable of opting out of that $1 per head cost, which when they've done the math, you get more than $1 back in return because of how high beef demand has gotten. And $1 is not very much. $1 is 33 cents ish, around 30 cents compared to what $1 was when they started this program back in the 1980s. And so what they've been able to do with a lot less money
Right.
compared to what they had in the 80s is absolutely mind-boggling. And what's interesting with the OFF Act, I've talked to Mike Lee in DC about this, and his viewpoint is that it is a tax. It is an unfair tax on beef producers, and I am coming to save cattle producers from tax. We told him it was voluntary. And I can't tell you for sure if we're the first people to tell him that, but his face kind of gave a little bit of a regret. But he's too deep in. He can't back out, and is my opinion. But he is aware of it. I know. But then Cory Booker, he's a vegan from New Jersey, and so the two of them teaming up for this is a very unusual team, I would say. His point of view for it is all about animal welfare concerns, trying to get rid of the beef industry and animal agriculture as a whole by decreasing the demand that these checkoff programs are able to produce. But the interesting part about that is that most crops have checkoffs as well. So this would also decrease the demand for the food that he's eating as a vegan. That is their viewpoints and how they're trying to attack checkoff programs as a whole, because it's not just the beef industry, but we usually get the brunt of the criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just hearing from Cheryl, getting to engage with, NCBA and ask questions for both of these big programs and groups, I think was really valuable, because we as ANCW got to ask relevant questions to us, to our states, to our organizations. And I think that was really great. And so after we heard from them, we kind of transitioned to the state president's council training. And so Nikki Weston, she gave a talk, which I thought was really great. She shared ideas. She talked about what ANCW is about, how to get your state organizations more involved with ANCW and why it matters. And one of the things I really took away from that talk is she highlighted Florida cattlewomen who have done an excellent job of increasing membership. And one of the ways that they've done that is their president has gone out and has interacted with people, cattle producers across their state, and they came out with this amazing song that she hired one of her friends to create, and it was coming together over beef was basically what this song was about. And so I really like to hear that talk.
Yeah, that was really well done. Really highlights the expectations of state presidents and their responsibilities and roles, what ANCW can also do for them. Which kind of after that, we were able to go into the state president's highlights and reports and get to hear what's going on in each state that was present, the good, the bad, and everything in between. And there's some amazing programs across this country that cattlewomen are doing, and so I think it's really interesting to listen to them because it kind of really brings the point home that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can take snippets from what other states are doing and apply it in your own state in what you are needing and what you're able to do. Whether that's fundraising or beef promotion or scholarships or anything of that sort.
I mean, between those two sessions, one, we had the opportunity to interact with each other. How can we increase membership, not only in our state organization, but with ANCW, and throwing ideas back and forth? So that was really valuable, but also hearing what other states are doing. So, for example, Montana, they talked about how they lined up tables and chairs and they got different restaurants in the area to cook up beef and serve it so people could engage with producers, engage with restaurants, talk about beef, hearing about those things that are going on in different states. Like you said, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, but just hearing from our fellow cattlewomen about how others are advocating for beef in their state is so helpful.
I think another really good state to highlight is Arizona. They started working with influencers. And because influencers have such a broad reach to such different audiences from one person, just working with a handful of them can get easily like a couple 100,000 people watching videos on social media about beef. And they are connected with these influencers and trust the influencers, so these, I mean, that's why they're called influencers, is because they have such an influence on people's lives. That is a really, really effective way to reach out to a very different audience. And that's something that Utah is going to start trying to do as well. As Brandy from Utah said, they are a capital of influence over there. So they are going to try to capitalize on the amount of influencers in their state.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting and something I probably never would have thought of getting people outside the industry to advocate for beef. And that kind of goes along with an event that Colorado cattlewomen are doing, and that is they are having a beef cook-off. They are bringing in chefs from around the country to cook beef in Denver and serve it to the general public. I mean, I think tickets are only $30, and there's going to be activities and concerts and just tasting beef. And I think that is such a good way to advocate for the industry, but also get people in urban areas involved. So yeah, I really valued that time of just hearing what other states are doing, and it gave me a lot of ideas on what I can bring home to my state.
Our older, more wise and experienced ladies have their own group called Golden Cowbells. And so during our lunch break, they had their own special luncheon. So they were able to chit chat and connect to each other and with each other during that lunch. And I heard it went quite well. After our lunch, we got to hear from National Grazing Lands Coalition from Abby Levin. They do a lot of really cool things for not only cattle ranchers, but people who are involved and hired by government agencies, NRCS, BLM, Forest Service, who are with the government doing conservation and ecological work and helping to bridge that gap between the producer and these agencies. By one of their programs is that they bring new hires to these different government agencies on a tour to a bunch of different ranches, and the ranches are able to tell them, I do this because, because not everything in the real world can be done through the textbook or the government handbook that they were handed out when they started the job and went through college. And so being able to kind of bridge that gap, because that's a big disconnect, especially out here in the West, trying to communicate with the government agencies and work through that red tape with them. So you're able to do your job and do it correctly. And so I thought that was a really, really cool program that they've done.
Yeah, and they host a ton of events, and they really seemed like they were eager to collaborate. And they really encouraged anyone who's interested in hosting a ranch tour, collaborating on an event, reach out to them. So if that's of interest to you, look up the National Grazing Lands Coalition, because I know that they have a good attitude about engaging with producers, especially with education. So that was a really great talk. And after that talk, we got into business. We started our first round of our committee meetings. So for those who aren't familiar with some of our committees, we first started with beef promotion, bylaws, CBAP, which is the Collegiate Beef Ambassadors Program, education, ways and means, and wired. So which of those events, Lana, did you attend those committees, and did you learn anything good on what's going on?
I attended half of two of Ways and Means and Wired, which is Women in Ranching Education Development. With Ways and Means, they're responsible for funding us. They're responsible for coming up with ways to maintain our budget and maybe even increase it on occasion. So we have the funds in order to do what we do. And so they do a lot of different things through wild rag sales to doing a cowgirl cotillion. That was done for the first time last year, and it made us a lot of money. And so it's something that we're going to continue to do. It requires a lot of planning, especially since we move to a different location for CattleCon each year. But they're really eager to take what they've learned from last year and apply it for this year. They're also going to start a cookbook, and people can buy brands to put on the cookbook and submit recipes and stuff like that. So that's really exciting. And for Wired, they have a couple events coming up. They have one in your state. You've been working closely with them in Wyoming coming up in a couple of weeks. We also have one in Hawaii planned in the next couple of months. So that's a big one everyone's really excited about, because that's someplace we don't usually get to travel. It's a women's event for women to be able to ask questions and feel more comfortable in an environment learning about ranching. And they do a different program for each state and go over different topics in each state. So it doesn't matter if you've gone to one, because if you go to another one, it's going to be completely different material. And it's just an opportunity for women to sit down and learn about the cattle industry, everything from farm safety to chute side handling to the business side of things. So that one's a really interesting one to go to.
Yeah, and so they have two more events this year. August 14th to the 16th is Laramie, Wyoming. September 11th to the 13th is Canyon, Texas. And they are looking for other locations to host a Wired. So if you're in a state and you are interested in hosting a Wired, reach out to them, because they are looking for next year's Wired locations. So after the first round of committee meetings, we got into our second round. So budget, communications, golden cowbells, legislation, membership, and wild. And of course, the budget, they're going over our budget, tying loose ends and making sure we're in line with where we need to be. One thing about legislation that I really appreciated is people may not know, but they basically have a list of policies that are important to ANCW, that ANCW will help support if the occasion arises. And so they definitely, when they get together, they talk about those issues and they make sure that they are updating them with the times.
Yes, legislation definitely has a big responsibility on their plate. And then I ran the communications committee because I'm the chair for this committee. And of course, Nicki was in there with me since she's the chair of the podcast. We have a lot of different irons in the fire in this committee, going over the podcast, social media, the newsletter, and the website. We are getting a new website here soon, which is also going to be a new membership database essentially, where we're able to know the status of our members and the contact information of them, and it acts as our general website. So we have a soft launch coming here in a couple of weeks, and then a hard launch coming here in a couple of months. So keep an eye out for that. And then just going over who we should interview for the podcast, different social media strategies, and everything like that.
Yeah, and we should probably mention about the website. With the new website coming up, they cannot transfer credit card information. So
Yes.
ANCW members in October, I believe, will have to renew their membership and put in their credit card to make sure you stay an ANCW member. The other thing we wanted to mention is that if you are in a state and you are doing something cool, take pictures and send us what you are doing. Communications@ancw.org is a great email to send those to us, and we want to feature you on ANCW social media. So we would love to hear from you guys. Also, if there's a committee you want to join, reach out as well, and we can try and connect you with that committee so you can get more involved.
We're also looking for Ranch Tip Tuesdays. If there's something unique that you do on your operation that you think can help others, let us know, and you can remain completely anonymous for the whole thing. And we are also looking for recipes to post. We want to feature you guys and feature the amazing things that you guys do as ANCW members. So we need all those amazing things sent in so we can highlight them.
Yes, absolutely. So send us your pictures, send us your videos. We want to see it all. And then the ANCW Foundation got together.
Just kind of to go into like what the foundation is. The foundation is the 501c3 arm of American National Caddo Women's. Since we do legislation work, we cannot be a 501c3. And so the foundation is our 501c3, which is a category of nonprofit. And so they kind of have their own budget. We work together with their money and our money to like kind of make everything work. They do things like some different scholarships, and they fund the internship at CattleCon that we do, and some different things like that.
It's a good group of ladies, and they keep everyone in line for sure. So after they got together, the day adjourned, and we all headed to the baseball game, the Padres game. So ANCW, we had a whole section at the Padres game. We got to watch baseball. It was great weather, and that was a great way to end our night.
Yeah, it was definitely, I've been to a few baseball games, so that was the most fun I've ever had at a baseball game. It was just very energetic. It was really fun being around our fellow NCW members and with their energy, and sharing snacks and swapping stories and stuff in the stands was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so Thursday was a full day, 8 to 5 p.m. We heard a lot from our amazing president, Nicki Weston. We got to meet our new executive director, Brandy Mills. So she's
Yes.
on board as the executive director, which is great. And then all of the industry updates, all of the committee meetings. It was really a full day.
It definitely made Friday a lot easier with it only being a half day. When we're in town, we make sure that we get a lot done in a short amount of time, because there's a lot going on back home. So we started Friday at 8 a.m. with the Collegiate Beef Advocates, the CPAP program. They gave a presentation. Their year is coming to an end. And so they kind of went over everything that they did. They traveled the country. They talked to students on campus. They talked to people at really large fairs, and everything that they are doing for our industry through this program. And they got a lot accomplished this year. There was 3 of them this year, so seeing their approaches to beef promotion and how it worked for them was really interesting.
Yeah, and it gave a lot of good ideas for us who have beef ambassador programs in our states of what kind of events can we have beef ambassadors do. And so I really appreciated that. They got to get awarded their scholarship at the meeting, so I know they really enjoyed that. So that was a short presentation by the 3 ladies out of Wyoming, Colorado, and Texas. And we moved right into the executive committee meeting, where one, we got to just hear who our executive committee is, what positions they hold, where they're from. So it was great to make that connection. And then we kind of got down to business. And one of the notable things that we talked about is the region meetings. And I don't know if they've been published yet, but we will be coming out with those. We're going to do an event highlights podcast episode on the region meetings telling you where they're going to be, when they're going to be, and what you can expect.
So our executive committee is our elected officers, along with all of the region representatives. And so we got to hear what's going on with them and how that's going to affect us. We got to celebrate Nikki Weston's birthday, our president's birthday. We were able to sneak cake into the hotel and sing her happy birthday. And she was so sweet. She said how wouldn't rather be with anyone else except us on her birthday, which was very, very sweet of her. But then we went into Sonoma County Farm Bureau.
Dana Ghirardelli, it works with the Farm Bureau, and goodness, you might think you have issues going on in your county. They had real issues going on.
Yes, it was Proposition J going on in that county. They are a huge agriculture county, but they are in a very progressive area. And so the gist of this proposition, a ban on CAFOs, a concentrated feeding operation. And what's interesting is that a concentrated feeding operation has nothing to do with animal welfare. It has nothing to do with pen space. It has nothing to do with anything like that. A CAFO is a definition that is by the Environmental Protection Agency over water quality. And so if you have a certain number of animals, whether one species or a combination thereof, you are under different water regulations for water quality through the EPA.
And she really just talked about how there were environmental extremists who were absolutely going after animal agriculture at large, because I believe San Francisco, it's nearby. And so they got a lot of people, not even from the county, coming in and spreading false information about what is animal agriculture. What really inspired me about her talk is she talked about their county's grassroots effort to combat this misinformation, to educate voters in this county about what the reality is. Because these environmental extremists, they had people outside of grocery stores getting people to sign a petition that basically said, all of these false things about animal welfare.
And it went beyond the standard, like getting people to sign petitions and giving them a load of junk and lies to get them to sign the petition, because they broke into farms, they stole animals, they dressed up as farm workers, they were stealing computer information. They would find farm workers' houses and protest in front of them to the point that they were having to quit and like leave town. It went well beyond petitions at grocery stores. She did call them animal rights terrorists because of how far they went. They were threatening people in their homes.
Yeah. And I just really shows the importance of being involved, even at the county level, because this area, they rallied together. They put out information that was telling the reality. They put out signs, and they ended up shutting this down in the polls. And it did not pass, thank the Lord. But it was because they got together, they fundraised to get the supplies to tell the real information. And the farmers and ranchers got together, people outside the county helped support their effort. And so it really was a grassroots effort. And she talked about how they didn't have any money to fight this. So they really had to fundraise hard.
Yeah, they had state farm bureaus, agriculture organizations from other counties come together. The troops truly rallied. She ran out of yard signs, but they also went through other avenues outside of the basic yard signs of no on Prop J that were really creative and really interesting. They had floats in the county parade. They had a tractor parade. They had like pumpkin harvest festival events. They also had their own events for the public, for the public to get to visit these farms and talk to producers. And they had events that were just about Prop J and events that were just general, inviting the public out. They were also able to get the proposition rephrased so it was less leading, because originally it talked about how this proposition was necessary for protecting animals and the environment. So they're able to get that reworded, which was sure a big help. But at the end of the day, they were able to shut it down by like I think 80% at least, which is a really big win in that type of situation.
Yeah, it just really shows the importance of educating the public and being present, which, I mean, if this doesn't convince you to join ANCW and your state cattlemen groups, I don't know what does, because this is an example of a success story, but these kinds of things are going to continue to happen. So we need to continue educating.
She touched about how we do not have the numbers that we used to in organizations like Farm Bureau, ANCW, whatever agriculture based grassroots organization you want to talk about. We do not have the numbers that we did in the past. And so not only do we have less numbers, but these groups are pushing and pushing more extreme things upon us. And so this is a kind of a now or never to be together, because if we're together and we have the numbers and we have the manpower, we're going to be able to hopefully prevent a lot of this stuff, but to also fight it off when it inevitably happens.
Absolutely. So after her talk, we moved into the ANCW Board of Directors meeting. This is where the committees bring their issues forward for the Board of Directors to vote on.
And the Board of Directors consist of state presidents along with a collegiate representative, a member at large. So it's kind of it's a much larger body than the executive committee. And so a lot of things within ANCW has to get voted on and approved by the executive committee, then the board of directors, and then the general membership at CattleCon. And so we got to go over a lot of the same issues as the executive committee and vote on it as well. So that went really well. There was some really good discussion about legislation and our stance on legislation. So when these topics come up, we as an organization know what our stance is.
We kind of ended Friday with closing remarks from our president, Mrs. Weston, and then we got the invite to Tennessee. And so we are going to do event highlights for all of these events upcoming with ANCW. For example, ANCW is going to DC in October, so we will do give you more information about that. But if you haven't seen yet, CattleCon 2026, it's happening in Nashville, downtown Nashville, February 3rd to the 5th. And ANCW, I believe, is going to be the 2 days before that.
It typically is, and then we'll likely have the tour the 3 days before that. We don't know where we're going for the tour yet, but we know it's going to be good.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We will keep you updated on all of these events happening with ANCW. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and thank you for listening to the podcast, because this is where we are going to give you all the information about these events.
Yes, thank you all so much for listening, and we hope that you tune in next time.